Welcome, friends. My guest this week has an extensive history in sales and will help you understand the benefits and opportunities to having a background in sales early in your career. Megan Metcalf is the National Sales Training Advisor for the Toshiba Corporation, but she got her start in one of their regional offices doing B2B sales right out of college. What I love about this interview is that Megan took risks and chances in her career that led her down a path that has generated great success. One of the main reasons that I observed is her ambition, tenacity, and high standards for the work that she does. It was enough for Toshiba to recognize her talent and bring her back to train. Megan also made significant location moves for professional opportunities that grew her career options immensely. One of the topics that we didn't have a chance to get into was her improv hobby. I'm bummed we weren't able to discuss it, but we have already agreed that she's going to come back in about a year to update us on remote working versus in person and how sales has been impacted or shifted because of the pandemic. I'll make sure to ask her about improv then. Also, Megan is open to connections and answering questions via LinkedIn, and I'll link her profile in the blog post for this episode. If you're looking for links to the resources mentioned in this episode, you can head over to ridethetidecollective.com/podcast to find the episode blog, and I'll also link this in the show notes. As always, if you want to connect with me or need inspirational and educational career management and advancement content, you can follow Ride the Tide Collective on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I am also on Clubhouse now at Ride the Tide COL. Welcome, everyone. I am very excited for our guest today. Her name is Megan Metcalf, and she is in sales. And I love talking to people who do sales because I feel like they are a totally different breed of person, and I appreciate what they do so much. And honestly, at the end of the day, we are all in the business of sales. And so I think today's conversation is really going to help you understand a little bit of that world, but also her career path, which has been absolutely phenomenal. Currently, she directs the National Sales Training Program for a global Fortune 500 technology company. You may have heard of it, the Toshiba Corporation. So those are pretty big shoes to fill, and that's an amazing position. But you have been doing this work for about 10 years now. So you are so seasoned in sales and training and all of that. So I know this is totally second nature for you. And you are also a sales methodology expert, which I think is awesome because that to me is like the science of sales and what goes into it, because I think sometimes people don't realize there is a lot more to it than just sitting in front of somebody and having a conversation. So a couple more things about Megan is that she got her bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where she is originally from, and that is in communications, journalism, and public relations. And also something we are probably going to talk about at the end, you take improv classes at the Groundlings Theater in West Hollywood. So that is definitely something that we are going to talk about. But thank you for being here today, Megan. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me, Julia. I really appreciate it. What a great opportunity.
Yes. Like I said, I love having people on who do sales because it's such a foundation to literally every business that is out there. And so when we get to talk to people who are experts in their field and who really have a strong understanding for that process, I think that is really great. So to start us off, can you tell me a little bit about your main responsibilities in your current position and a little bit of how you got to this place in your career?
Sure. So what I'm responsible for right now is, as you mentioned, directing the new hires through their onboarding program in sales. So nationally, if you start at Toshiba America and you start at one of the subsidiaries, you will go through right now it's a 5-week training. We've edited it to sort of around COVID. You go through this program and everybody goes through me and 2 of my other colleagues. I design all of the curriculum that our sales reps use, all of the talk scripts they use for prospecting, the process that they work through once they get a meeting with someone and they start qualifying to see if the meeting's an opportunity. I teach them how to present the solutions that we come up with and how to close the sale. So once they've gone through the onboarding program, they have the fundamentals of sales behind them so that they can ask good questions and get conversations going. That's not to say they're going to be an expert at it, because it takes time and practice to get the hang of it and a lot of activity. But essentially, if you have a process and you have a path that you're following, even if you get knocked off of it a little bit, this goes for conversations and everything. If you know where you're headed, you can bring everybody back. So essentially, I teach that process so they know if they get off track, where to get back onto and keep moving forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, what started your career in sales? Like, what made you go, oh yes, this is what I want to do? Because I feel like so many people have a unique path into this career.
That's a great question, because I initially studied journalism and public relations and really wanted to, consider a political career of some sort. And I was living in Charlotte at the time. I'm actually originally from about 2 hours west of Charlotte and moved there to go to school. But, I considered what I could get immediately. What kind of job do I think I can get immediately? So I went to a career fair that was hosting for new salespeople. You didn't have to have experience. And Toshiba was there, this is in 2011. And Toshiba was there, and, he looks at my resume. He says, "You want to come in and sit in on one of our trainings?" I'm so ready to get a professional job. I've just graduated school. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll come sit in. But I basically was already like, yeah, I'll take the job. I don't have to see anything. But I was so blown away by the training this office had. I came in every single morning at 8 a.m. They're practicing sales calls. They're practicing in-person prospecting, hosting meetings, closing strategies. They do this interactively every single day. And I attribute that to everything that I've been able to do, because I hit the ground running selling for Toshiba. And, I worked for them for about 4 years before I moved to New York City, where I took another opportunity with another company. And it wasn't but 2 years later that they came asking me to come back to do the training for the nation. So it just kind of like, I left and came back, and it came full circle. And it's funny because I had just taken to the training so much when we were doing that every morning that I just became excellent at it. And they needed a trainer, and who better? No.
That's so great, because that's recognizing that even though you have the sales skills, you also have this other skill set in education and teaching and being able to usher people through this intense process. So I think that's awesome that you had an organization that recognized that in you. How rare is that to happen these days?
I agree. And I had moved away, not only had because what happened was the boss that I had when I was selling at Toshiba last before I moved to New York City, he got promoted to director of the program. And he called me in New York and was like, "I have this opportunity. I don't know if you'll be interested in it, but you'll be able to do it from New York." And the rest is history. It was funny because I had to really sit and think about it, because I was on a roll with my new company, and I was, really starting to get the hang of it, getting into some really good opportunities and working with some really great people. But the opportunity to teach meant more to me than the opportunity to sell. And if you can teach somebody how to sell, and it was sort of like me giving back, because I was so lucky to be taught that skill set. And now I teach it, and I've taught it for just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps that you'll see they write about Toshiba. They take away the training for the sales team was excellent. So we really care about it. Me and my colleagues on my team, we care a lot about it.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. I love to hear that, because I come from a field before I owned my own business where it was completely hit or miss whether or not there was training. And that onboarding process, I read a stat recently, I'm not going to remember it exactly, out of Gallup that was saying something like 60% of employees who go through a formal onboarding training process are more likely to stay with the organization for a longer period of time because they get such good information and they feel equipped to do their job. The expectations are clear. They just have a better understanding than somebody who gets hired and essentially gets thrown into the fire and they have no idea, which way is up or down. So I think that's a great testament to the work that you're doing to find companies that are investing in their employees the way that Toshiba is, so that they are prepared to go out and do the work for the company. I think that's awesome.
It does show that we're invested. And I think that that's the larger part of it, aside from equipping them with the confidence that they have the skills they need. But the company says to you, I'm going to invest in you, so I need you to invest in yourself. Especially before COVID. I mean, we've transferred everything to be virtual these days, but used to, I traveled 50% of the time, and I went to meetings with reps and sat by them and worked with them on the phones. And that was an expense, but it demonstrated to the reps that we care. If you're struggling, someone's going to come out and work with you and see if we can't figure out what it is. Because, you get hired, you make it through the onboarding program, you've shown everyone you have the ability to do it. Sometimes it's just a few things that need to change. Something clicks suddenly. It's weird how it all happens, how it all comes together,
Yeah. And sometimes you don't realize maybe you're giving off something or you're saying something just slightly the wrong way that can turn the whole sale around.
I currently teach a seminar on, the importance of tonality and modulation and pace and how you shouldn't underestimate when you're reaching out to someone, how much of it is just simply that this passionate, engaging person has reached out to me. I'm curious to learn more about them,
Mm-hmm.
So when you're making these calls, two people can read the same script and it sends a total different message. And sometimes I'll listen in and that's what I figure out. And it's practice. You have to practice having an engaging voice and speaking up and slowing down at the right times, piquing the interest here and there. But it's all an art. And when you bring new people on who have never sold before, we bring experienced people too. But a lot of our new hires, this is their first sales job. Or it might be that they've had an inside sales job where they were just lead generators, but they're now ready to do an outside sales job. And so you really got to teach them everything.
Right. Okay. I have to go back to something that you said from earlier in your career. So you went to a career fair. Okay. So the reason I'm bringing this up, my background's in higher ed. I used to be in the office that put on the career fairs. So first of all, thank you on behalf of the University of North Carolina, thank you for going to the career fair. But the reason I want to bring that up is because career fairs are such a great opportunity to find new corporations. And whether it's a corporation that's been around for 100 years like Toshiba, or it's an up and coming startup or an alum has a new company, something like that, that is such a great opportunity. And I bring that up because I'm all about resourcing people as much as possible. And what's really awesome right now with COVID is not awesome, but the opportunities that COVID has brought about, if you have an alma mater, go and check them out and see what opportunities are available online now, because I know I'm still connected to a lot of career people in the world, and there are tons of opportunities and presentations and career fairs that are going online. And for most people, alumni can go to those events and talk to people and all of that. And with it being online, it's a little bit different, but sometimes there's opportunity there because I can tell you not a lot of people attend those events. So I just want to put that out there for listeners to go to those events and stalk your alma mater and see what they've got going on, because this is a good time to be doing that right now in the springtime heading into summer when companies are going to be doing a lot of hiring.
Absolutely. And, I was having a conversation with my partner, Michael, the other day about, when it's time to lean into what you already know and when it's time to branch out. And when you're not getting any new ideas, a lot of it is leaning into your passions and leaning into the things that you've invested in already and figuring out, like, how do I make a path out of this? With school, I just graduated college. I didn't study sales or business or marketing. I didn't study any of that. And I think when you go to something like a career fair, you're saying, I'm open to something different. I'm open to new ideas. And maybe, if I hadn't gone to that, or if I hadn't wound up at Toshiba, I don't think I would have had the money to move to New York. And I don't think I would have had, I guess I would have gotten experience in something else, but I made a lot of money quickly at Toshiba. And then I had a lot of confidence to go for a sales position in New York, And so from there, it's just more or less kind of luck, but just being open, like maybe I thought something was going to go this way and now it's not. So I have to start looking at my options here. Where can I go and find the most collected amount of resources in one place? Right. And when you're looking for a job, a career fair feels pretty obvious.
Yes. Yeah, no, that is such a great point. And one of the things I wanted to bring up too, back in the day when I was working with new grads, recent grads and all that, the ones that would come to me and say, I need to pay off my loans. I care about money. I want to, do this, do that, whatever they wanted to do. I would tell them, if you want to make money fast, you have to go into sales. You have to find a good company and go into sales because you will have the biggest return the fastest if you go down that route. And I will tell you, the amount of people who cowered back from me when I said sales was astronomical. It blew my mind, unless they were a student athlete. Student athletes really liked the competitive nature of sales, so they really gravitated to it. But it shocked me so much. And I realized that sales has such a bad rap out there. And again, that's part of why I brought you on, because I want to share, I think, the positive side of this career path, which is, as we've been talking about, you're getting a strong skill set right out of the gate to go and do so many different things. You started with sales and then now you're in more of this teaching, mentoring, coaching role. And I think that's such a great transition. And again, every single part of a company is about sales. You are selling to somebody at some point in your day, whether you realize it or not. And I think it's such a great skill set to have early in your career, because you'll be able to leverage it so much moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Everything is selling. Everything is. And the skills that I think that, when people learn how to sell something, it could be anything, but there's so many levels of like relationship building, and, people have to be good at relationship building, but we often find that just because people are good at relationship building doesn't mean that they can move a process forward or that they can get people to say yes. And so we have, we'll have people who have all the intangibles, but they don't match it with a skill set. And I think the skill set is what gives people the confidence to ask for people's business and to ask them to do things that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily feel comfortable asking. And when you mention hustlers, like people who they want to make a lot of money fast, some people will respond really well, me being one of them, to the idea that however hard I work, I'm going to be compensated for. So if I outwork everybody, I'm going to make more money. Whereas in some jobs, like the one I have now, I could outwork everybody and I'd still make the same amount. Yeah, I think it's a very, very valuable skill. It isn't for everybody. I mean, it isn't. There has to be some competitive nature and this feeling of if I can learn this skill, I'll be fearless. But some people are never comfortable following up and asking people for their business or negotiating price. Some people, that is just, they're not built for that. And you talk about athletes, and you're right. We usually, athletes that come on board, they have a lot of success. What also makes athletes really great hires in a sales organization is that they're coachable.
Yes.
And a part of being good at sales is being coached. So if you have a hard time being coached, you might have a hard time being trained,
Yeah.
So there's so many variables we look at when hiring, and it isn't right for everybody. But like you said, it's a good skill to have, even if you don't intend to do it forever.
That's so great. Okay, I want to dig into your career path a little bit more because you have had some interesting transitions. Tell me about 2 to 3 poignant transitions that got you to where you're at right now.
Great question. The training in Charlotte, the training that I got from Toshiba, not just as a new hire, but, every day consistent, to where I know it like the back of my hand. That was the first thing. Then I could take that knowledge, because it wasn't that I got poor training at the next company that I worked for. I worked for 2 different companies in New York City, one fairly short term. But the company that I was with when I left for Toshiba, it wasn't that I got poor training. It was that I sold myself as a senior account executive. So I had to learn about what I was selling, but I was expected to already know a sales process and how to prospect. And so that skill set that I got in Charlotte, I mean, thank God for it, because that's how I was able to operate. And I got lucky enough to work with this really, really brilliant sales manager. And it took me a while to see his brilliance, and his madness was pretty overwhelming at the beginning. I'd say it to him. I love him to, he started his own company now, but he taught me so many things that I teach today, and got me confident. So I learned this skill set of like prospecting and scripts and handling objections and closing. I learned all of that in my first job. He gave me tools like email marketing and LinkedIn, getting really good at LinkedIn and things that were more updated. It was like I learned the traditional methods, and then I learned, the adjustments that have been made since all this technology's got. And it's funny, because it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
But people are so accustomed to the old way of doing things. My best way of prospecting still personally is just to walk in, even in major accounts. Like one of my accounts in New York City was the New York Times. And when I was actively prospecting them, it was during 2016 leading up to the election. So these people were busy, and here I am. I'm like, I still just want to go by there. I still just want to, because that's what I knew. And my boss was like, you're going to have to work LinkedIn. You're going to have to work emails. You're not going to get past those security guards. I don't care how many you got past in Charlotte. It's not going to happen. And so, that forced me to try things differently and to get good at them, not just try them and say, I don't think it's working for me, but being forced to do it until I realized it does work. Right. And then moving out to Los Angeles, the reason I'm here for a few different reasons personally, but professionally, my corporate office, Toshiba America Corporation, is in Irvine. So just about an hour or so, depending on traffic south.
LA traffic, man.
I haven't had to drive in it in a very long time. And even during normal times, like I only went down, I've worked remotely for a while because I travel a lot. So going to an office every day is a thing of the old past for me.
Right. Yeah. And I think you bring up something that's really key too. I feel like it depends on what you're selling, who you're selling to, what tactic you're going to use for them. It might make sense for certain organizations for you to walk through the front door. But, I'm just thinking now about how there are so many startups out there, and walking through the front door, you can't even do that because there is no front door. So you have to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
online.
I really do live in like 1987. I really do. Because in my mind, you can walk in, there'll be a couple of gatekeepers sitting up front. No, I stay current, and I've been out in the field with my reps. And to be fair, across the nation, there are plenty of places that you could do that just fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you go around New York City. I mean, I cold called everyone. So you can go in restaurants and hotels, and in certain neighborhoods, you certainly can do the same. You can walk in and you talk to people, and churches, there's always places that people are pretty friendly. But yeah, when you get to a high security type situation, you gotta go through LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I think even with COVID, that has changed. Totally. Again, we're seeing another change. I think that you saw technology coming in and people being resistant to that. And we're seeing almost this second wave of technology where you can't be resistant because your business is, unless you have a very localized business, you're not going to move anything forward because everything is being done for the most part online now. And so people are really having to make that shift internally and externally to make it happen.
You're right. I mean, we did that at Toshiba. We went from, I traveled every other week. 50% of my job was traveling. And then I would also teach a 1 week, 5-day boot camp of the sales process. It's called Professional Sales Skills 101. And that would be very interactive, role playing, people getting feedback and notes on things they could do differently, not just from me, but from their peers. And now I'm teaching the reps to set up virtual meetings, with their clients. So we're a far cry from the interaction that we all used to have with each other. And these changes have been so interesting because we've still done well. And there are businesses that have succeeded through this, but everything is going to change as far as who's coming in the office, who's necessary to do that. I mean, we have a huge campus for Toshiba down in Irvine that it's not full in the slightest. So
right.
Why are we paying, we start thinking about things. Why as a company would we be spending that kind of money if now we've seen from this impromptu experiment that it's not really necessary for people to come into the office every day. If it doesn't make sense, It doesn't have to happen. So
yeah, I remember I used to live in Irvine, so I used to drive by that building and I remember it.
We might have moved since then. When did you live in Irvine?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. 2008.
I think we've moved since then because I'm pretty sure we moved a few years after that. Both campuses were huge, but this one's even bigger. So
oh my gosh.
You can imagine. Yeah. So people start thinking about that. And smaller companies especially are saying to themselves, why do I have to have this lease? Like if I can just call someone, if we can do a Zoom call or Microsoft Teams or whatever, maybe we eliminate unnecessary expenses. It makes sense. Keep the overhead low.
It's going to be so interesting to see how long-term this impacts corporations and corporate real estate. And oh my gosh, we could have a complete side conversation about that.
Well, yes, we could. Yes, we could. It's going to change everything. Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see when we catch up in like a year. We'll have to see what's happened, once the vaccine is out there and things hopefully are a little bit more back to normal. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to sales, to traditional sales, and how, are people going to travel still, depending on the account and all of that. I think is going to be.
I'm wondering too. I'm very much wondering, I think there will always be exceptions that in person is more powerful, and I think it, across the board it is. but people are going to be weary for a long time. My grandma's getting the vaccine today. I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, that's great.
But, like, it's going to be a while before people are okay with, inviting people into their office that they're not even sure, it's whatever you're accustomed to. And the adjustments are everything. And fortunately at Toshiba, we provide products to help people work remotely and securely. So, when we're reaching out to people, our purpose is, hey, if you're not able to access your documents remotely and securely, you need to be in that position. It's no more of this, like, oh, you're just not ready for that yet. Like, what are you waiting on?
Right. Yes.
What are you waiting on?
Right. You're seeing so many companies realize, oh, we are not set up for the online world, and they're having to scramble and make it happen so that their business can continue. And like you said earlier, certain organizations and companies are going to thrive on that. And I think Toshiba is definitely one of them. They're taking advantage of that in a positive way to help other organizations move forward. And that's Absolutely. What needs to happen.
You have to be needed. You have to have products people need. And those types of things change over time. I've researched a lot about essential businesses and helping, so I can help the reps, building their prospecting list and starting with people who business hasn't changed that much. And if anything, maybe has increased since COVID, and, healthcare and finance, real estate, transportation, things like that. And then I got to facility services, which is still, a big, thinking about like Cintas uniforms and things like that. They're very much an essential business right now. But I was thinking, as as corporations change, like these needs for facility services like mats and paper towels and toilet paper and all of that, like I just start thinking about the trickle down effect of what types of companies are going to be affected by how these change. Like it's too much almost. Like it's too much.
But here's the opportunity, though, for people who might be in a position and they're listening to this and going, what opportunities are out there? Where are the jobs? There are no jobs. There are jobs. And that type of thinking, the line that you just made, that is how people can figure out where the opportunities are going to be in what sectors and industries after something major like this happens. So I think that's such a valuable train of thought, not only in sales when you're trying to figure out where your prospects are coming from, but in a job search process and trying to figure out what is my next step going to be in my career. I want out, or I want something different. Thinking about where those opportunities are going to pop up, that's huge. I wouldn't go for commercial real estate right now, but
absolutely.
But other opportunities.
When thinking about, because I spent a lot of time thinking about this myself, and my partner Michael, and friends of mine, we're all constantly wondering what we offer. And when you think about the job market, and when people say, I don't want to call things excuses, because I believe to people they're real, they feel real, they don't feel like an excuse. But to succeed, you have to think about how you fit in what you're facing currently. You have to think about, all right, so maybe this isn't what I wanted, but this is what it is. And what qualities do I have that meets the needs of the world today? And work backwards. You work backwards from that. And yeah, I don't know that I would get into certain, but you look at the places that don't seem to be going anywhere and model after that and figure out what do I bring to the table, and let me bring it,
Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. These are the things I like other people to say, because it reinforces exactly what I share with people. And I love that, because even so, from a sales perspective too, every company has account executives, sales reps, people who are going out and selling their product, buying the product. Like that is going to happen in every single industry. That's part of what we're talking about, right? But there are other fields too. Like you're going to have accountants in most organizations. You're going to have marketing. You're going to have human resources in every sector, in every industry, in pretty much every corporation. And if they don't have in-house positions for that, there are companies that they outsource to do that work. And
exactly.
So yeah, it's getting people to think through beyond what they think they know and their tunnel vision and go, okay, how do I go beyond this and create the future that I want for myself in my career?
Yeah, and it's difficult, and it takes a lot of self-reflection and, really understanding who you are, who you want your brand to be. And, when you talk about maybe being in a specialized field and then companies that maybe you want to work for would outsource that work, like there's all kinds of avenues. And, being realistic with yourself and what comes naturally, like going back to leaning into what you already know and leaning into what you feel good at and that you care about the most. Sometimes it can go multiple ways. Sometimes you just keep doing what you're already doing and doing it well to your best ability, and the opportunities will unfold from that. I feel like that's what happened with me in this role, because I wasn't looking to go back to Toshiba. And it wasn't like going back because I went from working for one of the subsidiaries to the corporate, But, I wasn't thinking about Toshiba at all. I was just trying to get my skill set down for what I was doing then. And because being a perfectionist, not in the bad way. I really don't think I'm a perfectionist in a bad way. More so just like whatever I'm doing, I need to feel like I'm doing it better than everybody else. And so, but it's not like, it's an internal competition, because I've really always loved my colleagues and wanted to see them succeed. And I think a big part of my success too has been the relationship factor, because I think leaders at their core have to be relatable and empathetic and reasonable, and if not, then they miss a lot. And you can get people to listen to you and respond to you because they can see that you really care and that you're a genuine person and that it's not about me. It never is about me. I don't make any more money whether or not they stay or go. Like, I really do have an investment in them being the best version of themselves. And so when I was learning the training initially, and it's changed a lot, it's evolved. We've rewritten the all the materials that we sent out, just trial and error, learning new things, adding, changing, COVID, virtual, whatever. Things change and we change with it. But the fundamentals are always there. And the fundamentals are what I learned when I was 23 years old. Like, if you have, this inner drive in you to be good at what you're doing. Like, I see so many people don't even try, because I don't know what the blocker is. I don't get a chance to know everybody well enough to figure out what their blockers are. Sometimes I wish I managed a small team, because I don't directly manage anyone, but I have responsibility to, most of the sales reps nationally. And so sometimes I don't have time to figure out what it is, but most of the time I think the blocker is the belief that it's possible.
Hey friends, Julia here. I wanted to take a break in the interview to share about a new resource you're going to want to sign up for. Career management and advancement is often one of the most overlooked areas of our life when it comes to personal growth and investment, even though we spend about a third or more of our day working in said career. Now is the time to start investing in yourself and your career, and the Career Hack Masterclass is the best first step. This 5-part video masterclass with subtitles takes you through some of my process along with some of my best actionable tips to start advancing your career now. Normally, a masterclass like this would be a $200 to $300 investment, but I am giving it away for free because I want to see you start to take control of your career. Head over to controlyourcareernow.com/careerhackmasterclass to sign up and start investing in your career today. For those who do sign up, there is a special offer that you'll want to take advantage of, which is also free. Hint, it might include a session with me. Again, head over to controlyourcareernow.com/careerhackmasterclass to sign up today. I'll leave the link in the show notes and blog post for this episode. Now let's get back to the interview.
So I guess bringing full circle, what I'm saying here is like, there has to be confidence in you that it can be done. And whatever it takes to get that confidence, whether it's polishing the skill set, learning the training, memorizing scripts and handling objections, and whatever it is that makes you confident, without that, that's the disconnect. That's the disconnect in getting a job. That's the disconnect in building relationships with people. People want to build relationships with people that are confident in themselves, because it's all subconscious too, you know, like that you just feel better about yourself when you're around people who feel good about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's natural for some people, but it is definitely a skill that can be learned, you know, confidence that you can do things and be okay even if you fail. And, you know, those are things you can learn.
Right. I found with clients, I work with a lot of clients who have that kind of block that you're talking about. And more often than not, and I was actually like this too, so I speak from experience as well, there is an internal voice that basically is telling you you can't do it. And a lot of times it stems from something somebody at some point in your life said to you, whether that was a parent, a mentor, a professor, a boss. You know, somebody said something and you took that and you internalized it, and it has created this block that you cannot get past. And until you start to unravel that and do some of the deeper work of what are these voices in my head, so to speak, that are telling me I can't do it, you know? And I also find a lot of people hide behind like personality type. So like I'm an introvert, and, you know, I hear people say, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't do sales. And I'm like, oh, nope, that's not how introversion, extroversion works. Like that's not a predetermined thing that if you're an introvert, you can't do sales.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. I don't enjoy doing sales, but there's a part in the process where I actually do enjoy it and do very well at it. And I know that because I've identified that by doing it over and over and over again. And so understanding where you fit, what your strengths are, and dealing with whatever's happening up in your head, that's the barrier. That is the thing that I think can push you forward from mediocre averageness to being excellent at whatever position you're in.
You know, that's, I was really thinking a lot about what you're saying about blockers and what people internalize that keep them from trying things. And I think it's really important from a leadership perspective to acknowledge specific things that people do well and encourage it more and more. You know, I always, when I meet a new group of salespeople that are new hires going through the program, I always lead the conversation by saying, you know, you got hired here because someone found something spectacular about you. So you're already off to the right start. And I hope when I say things like that, that it proves to them that whatever they thought about before, somebody here, and now me too, through osmosis, find them something about them pretty awesome. So, you know, just learn this stuff and let yourself be good at it. Like, I recently read Led from the Outside by Stacey Abrams. And she says, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but she says, don't tell yourself no, let them tell you no. And it can apply to so many things. You know, I thought about it from a sales perspective, but you also think about it for asking for a promotion or a raise or asking for a job, period. You know, you're in the interview process. I want this job, you know, tell me no if you don't want me here, you know. Yes. And another thing that book that I really love about things that I read was she mentioned, instead of looking at ways to win, how to win, look at why you should. And it is really interesting because we do solution-based selling, and that's what I focus to, is filling a need, providing a solution to problems we've uncovered and looking at the situation and seeing if we're helpful, seeing if we can. And, when I think about, instead of how to win, why you should win, if you're doing the things that you should do because, let's say in my example with clients, I should win this deal because I've uncovered this for you. I've helped ask these questions that got you thinking about it this way. And I've been around more than the person that you're currently, working with, it could be anything, but whatever is important to the client. But, in thinking about looking for a job and stuff, it's not about how to win. Why should you win? You probably should, but you should know why. Because similarly to getting to the closing table, closing of anything, in a sales situation, hopefully you're not closing on price, you're closing on value. And, if you've done the right thing through the process, if you've created value in whatever your service or products are, then you get to the closing table. If they object to the price, or you get to the end of your interview process and they object to you, you've earned the right to ask why and combat it. Mm-hmm. And if you know internally that they should be hiring you or they should be buying from you, all you have to do is show that to them. Make it very clear,
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I had a client right before this interview text me and say, I got the offer, but I don't think I'm going to negotiate the offer because I feel so happy that they even gave me the offer. And I was like, no. You will negotiate the offer.
They're not going to take it away.
They're not going to take it away. They already offered it. So I'm like, get your research straight. I don't think she thought she was going to get the offer, which is a totally different issue. But I was like, get your research straight. And I'm going to call you later. And we're going to talk about this. Because I'm like, you have to counter because you have value. You have worth. And it's exactly what you're talking about. You have to believe that you are the best and right person for that job. And you have to convey that and come to the table with those points. And when I've worked with somebody through an interview process, which I don't do as much of that anymore, but when we do go through that process, half the battle is, do you even believe that you can do the job? Because if you don't think you can do the job, they're going to know that in the interview and it's not going to translate.
It's so funny because it's sometimes hard lessons learned. Mm-hmm. I can look back on times that I interviewed for a job that I can clearly see why I wasn't hired. Like at the time I could not figure it out. But then looking back on it, I don't think I thought I could do that job. Mm-hmm. Funny Absolutely. Story. I actually interviewed for the job that I have now. It came down to 2 people before I moved to New York. I kind of forgot about this. And they didn't choose me. And I remember believing that the person that they did choose should have it over me. I remember thinking that. I did well in my interviews. I made it till the final 2, but I thought he deserved it more. And he was a colleague of mine that didn't work in the same office, but we had, we knew each other. And so I almost wasn't even upset about it. I was and I wasn't, but I'm like, I'm sure I didn't get it because I didn't think I was the right one for it. I thought, and now a few years later, when I did get the job, I didn't even have to interview for it really. I mean, it was a formality, right. And it was
which is the dream, by the way.
I needed to go to New York and gain some additional skills and get a few more years. I mean, I was 27, so it was going to be difficult for people to take me seriously, maybe as a trainer who had only been in North Carolina and was supposed to be training people nationally. But it was I got the New York experience And people are like, okay, if you can sell in New York and you can teach in New York, then I'm sure you'll probably be able to teach or sell anywhere. And it's true.
Okay. And I have to point out too, we don't have to go into this experience, but one of the things that you sold in New York was water. So
yeah, I did.
That's what I'm looking at on LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it. Obviously, again, sales in every facet. And so the fact that you could go and do that, it just makes me think like you can sell ice to an Eskimo. Right?
It was a hard job. I'm not going to lie. It was a hard job because that was the job I took to get to New York. And I think I could have done really well at it, but my heart wasn't in it. And I really liked the people I worked with and stuff, but my heart wasn't in it. And what I was selling was, it was sparkling and still water on demand with recyclable bottles. So it was an eco-friendly alternative to buying traditional bottled waters. And we had a really great portfolio of clients who wanted to offer an eco-friendly alternative, to buying bottled water. But the problem is that these systems were huge. So unless you had a kitchen that could support it, New York City is a very difficult place to sell a large item, because everyone's in such tight spaces already. So if they didn't prepare for that when they were building their restaurant or building it out, it was pretty much a no-go unless it was a huge space. We sold to a lot of hotels and things like that. But we would try to find restaurants before they opened so they could, go ahead and prepare for it. But it was a very difficult job. So I bartended between that. You won't find that on the LinkedIn resume. But I bartended for 3 months in between Vero Water and going over to Mitchell Martin, which was a fun experience. But I just couldn't keep it up, Yeah. And the rest is history.
Okay, so we have been talking about so many different things, which I love. This conversation has just gone on so naturally to talk about, career tips for people and all of that. I'm loving it so much. But I want to hone in a little bit more, especially because of the role that you have now and past positions. What are your top 3 management tips as somebody who has been a manager and has also been managed by people? What are the 3 things that you feel like people need in terms of management?
So I definitely think that, there's been this big conversation, hard skills versus soft skills, and I think that as a manager, you have to plainly show the hard skills. They need to have a direction, a path that they can stick to that's been outlined, that there is no ambiguity about. Everything needs to be very clear. You have to paint a clear picture for your team about where they're at now, what the next steps are, and what the future is. And then you have to cater that to what motivates your employees individually. Because I think that's the biggest struggle. And it's hard for leadership. It's hard for leadership to identify what type of, but it can be as simple as having a good relationship with them and not a relationship that teeters on the boundaries. It's hard. I find that it's hard for leadership to find the healthy balance between having a deep connected relationship with their employees and not blurring any lines. But I think what that comes with is respect. So sometimes you can get away with blurring the lines a little bit if you're respected in what you do. And the way that you earn respect is to walk it like you think it and how you project it. When what you say and what you do and what you think are in line as a leader, you will demonstrate that. So I guess just doing the things you expect your employees to do, being willing to jump in, also having a clear message, and being relatable and empathetic. I mean, those are the keys. Nobody wants to work. You'll keep those people around. Don't harp on somebody if they've got something personal going on and it. Don't stay on top of them during that. And I bet you once they've moved past this hard time, they're going to come back 150%. But if you make it clear that they aren't a person to you, that they're an employee to you, then that's how they'll react to you too. You know, people will go the extra mile for leaders who care about them.
Yes, absolutely.
They will.
Absolutely.
I will. You know, you see the humanity in people and you start responding to that. Right. And if you're the one in charge, just show them why you're in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I have more of a specific question related to sales and management. So there was a book that I read many years ago, First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he talked about was putting people in the right seats in an organization in terms of their strengths. And he gave an example of a sales manager who was the top sales person for that company. And, you know, upper leadership moved that person into a management role. And this person like failed epically at management because he didn't have the soft skills. I think it was a man. He was such an amazing salesperson, but not a good manager. And I see this happen all over the place, every sector. I feel like all of us know somebody where this happened. They were amazing at their job, at their specific functional area. So they got pushed into management, and then everybody left because nobody wanted to work for them because they didn't have the management skills. So from a sales perspective, is there a route then in, I would say, let's say most companies or the majority of companies, for somebody to be insanely good at sales and continue on that path versus having to go into a management role to seemingly move up?
Most do. Most stay in sales. And you're right. I've seen it happen. I mean, you take somebody who's really great at sales and you put them in a position of managing people and they've not developed that skill set. They're fish out of water. Alternatively, maybe they didn't want the responsibility. It's hard to say why that kind of thing happens. Sometimes people think they want the responsibility, then they figure out that that's not really for them. But I think when you look at those who are meant to lead, there are these things, soft skills, buzzwords, that you notice about someone who's meant for that. Just thinking about me personally, I always helped people. I always went on ride days with people and helped them close their deals. And it wasn't for any reward. I just like to see people do well. And I think most people would much rather soar with the eagles than walk around with the turkeys. You know, I flourish in an environment that people are all succeeding. Right. And so sometimes what I think happens is you've got one person succeeding and the others aren't. So you say, oh, well, what makes sense is to take this person who's succeeding and have them in charge of the ones who aren't. But what happens is that maybe that person was succeeding because they were doing their own thing. Like, you know, sales is a very selfish sport overall. Most salespeople don't want to spend their time helping people because that's time they could be making money. I get that, and I appreciate that in a salesperson. Right. So I think if someone cares more, you have to ask them. Like I said, I care more about educating people on how to do something than I care about doing it myself. And I'm making more money than I was in sales, so that's helpful. But I could make more money than this, you know, if I'd stayed in sales. So if there are career salespeople all over the place, I mean, we have people who have been in sales for 30 years and never been interested whatsoever in taking a leadership role because they love making their own hours. You know, if you've been in sales 3 or 4 or 5 years and you have consistent numbers, everybody's going to leave you alone. If you're in leadership, you got to be around all the time.
Right.
You got to know everything that's going on.
Yeah.
You know,
that's something to think about too. Again, people listening who are, you know, in between or trying to figure out what's next. I think there are so many values that sales, that career path hits on that people are looking for. But again, I think sometimes there's this oh no, I can't do it. Or I don't know, I've never done anything like that. And what I love about this conversation is you're like, nope, there's training. Like we train you, we help you. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
You can't blame the training.
But I think that's so great because especially now, and I've seen this more with the millennial generation than anything, they want more flexibility. They want more control over their career and where they're headed and what they're doing and their time and family and all of that. And I love this conversation because it really brings to light that if you approach a sales career with excellence, you're doing it well, and you're on a good path, you can have those things. And I think that's really great for people to understand.
Yeah, if you want flexibility, it's really just a matter of getting the hang of it. I would encourage people who are interested in getting into sales. So at some points in your career, you will have to use companies as stepping stones.
Right.
And I essentially did that in a way. I treated Toshiba initially as a stepping stone because I thought I'm just going to go get my intro to basic sales and take it from there. And so there are going to be times that you take a job that you say, this job's getting me to something else. Yep. But if you get into a job that you like, specifically a sales job, I would stick with it for the long term because there's going to be ebbs and flows in everything that you do. And if you want to be in sales, it gets easier and easier as the years go by if you stay at the same place. I mean, as long as it's fulfilling to you, but right. If it's not fulfilling, leave. I'm a big, if you over time are not fulfilled by your job, find a new one for sure. But if you like it and you're good at it and you're making good money and you have a flexible lifestyle and you're allowed to do your hobbies and you can do your own thing, that's only going to increase. If your main goal is having flexibility and making good money, a sales path, if you can handle it, is going to be a good one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Okay. I have a really specific resourcing question. I like to make sure that we provide our listeners with as many resources as possible. And I think we've done quite a bit of that today. But what is one book that changed your perspective in your life or your career?
I don't know if there's one book that changed my perspective totally. There's a few I would recommend to. They're written by women authors, but they really make the point that you don't overestimate the people around you. So if any book did change my life, it would be Becoming by Michelle Obama.
I hear that from a lot of people.
And I mentioned earlier, Lead from the Outside, Stacey Abrams. I cannot recommend that book enough because convincing other people that you're capable is a skill, and it talks a lot about that. And it talks about it from the perspective, I don't relate to her entirely because she's a Black woman and that changes her experience tremendously at the table. But as a woman at the table, especially in technology where there are very few. And I don't blame the companies in general necessarily. There's a mixture of blame to be pointed out, but a lot of it is the belief that women should be sitting in certain rooms or sitting at certain tables, and those shoulds may keep us from going for it, And both of those books, for men and women, truly just talk about you might be overestimating the people around you because I remember, and again, I'll probably butcher this quote, but Michelle Obama talked about, how smart she thought all these people were sitting around the table. And then when she sat there, she realized that they weren't that smart. And I've been around a lot of smart people, but I could relate to that. Like you can't overestimate others and underestimate yourself, right. And so both of those, Lead from the Outside, Stacey Abrams, I highly recommend it. It will talk to you about confidence and fitting in places that you might feel like the token person or, and how to adjust and not play into certain things, self-deprecating things as a way to make jokes or,
Yes.
I think my consistent message will always be, you've got to figure out what makes you confident and go all in. Because that confidence is what's going to get you to each next step,
Yes. Oh, I love that. Okay, that leads really well into my last question, which is tell me, and you may have already talked about this, so you can reiterate it, but tell me about a time when you felt like you took control of your career.
I think when I was choosing to come to Toshiba and I was on the path we were just talking about, am I going to stay in sales where I can make as much money as hard as I work, and the more clients I have under my belt, I'll get more referral. The possibilities in New York City were endless. Or do I not financially? I still was taking a financial step forward, but it would be limited for the time being, right? It would be what it was, and decide what's more important: teaching or making more money. Teaching or making more money, and I think there can be a balance of both, but I took control of that part, and I said, I'd rather teach somebody how to do this. And I still get a chance to sell because I sell our training all the time. I'm constantly selling how important the training is. And then I also go out and do closes with reps and stuff. But I took control of that because I will not go back into sales from here. I will only want to be in leadership roles moving forward.
That's so great. That's great. And I love that. I love that you have made that choice for yourself because again, we're having this conversation about confidence and path and know your lane, know what you want. Choosing to go into leadership at a corporation, wherever it is, that is a big commitment that you are making to yourself and to those around you to say, I'm going for leadership. That is my path. And there are skills, soft skills, around that have to be created and relationships that have to be built. But when you know that that's where you're headed, you can now be so much more intentional with your time and what you say yes to and what you say no to. And that's why I always ask that question, because one of my big tenets is you need to control the path that you're on. And I think especially for women, and my audience is men and women across the board, but so often women put limits on themselves and also people of color. And I've had some conversations with other guests who are women of color about the same topics. We're putting limits on ourselves because we don't see people in those leadership positions that look like us.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. We have to keep
because it's like
forward.
A catch-22. Like the only way to see it, and you look at Kamala Harris, and there are going to be little girls who never knew a world where there wasn't a woman vice president. So that in itself is a game changer. Hillary Clinton running for president. I mean, whether or not however you feel about these people, it doesn't matter. It's through the lenses. Seeing it makes it more believable, and you say, okay, well, I wouldn't be the first. And sometimes just not being the first is helpful.
Right. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Megan. I loved this conversation, and I know that my audience is going to love this conversation as well. It shed such a positive light on the world of sales and the opportunities available. And honestly, we got into a lot of nitty-gritty job search tips and information, which I think is so great for people to hear other perspectives of what that looks like. Because sometimes hearing it from the career coach, it's like, oh, you don't know, even though you do this all the time. So I appreciate it.
The reinforcement is always helpful. I agree.
Yes. Again, thank you so much for being on. I've really enjoyed our time, and we'll definitely have to catch up in a year to see what's going on with sales and traveling and all of that. So I'll have to have you back on.
I'd be glad to. I appreciate it, Julia. Thank you so much.